The planet was nothing like Earth. No trees, no oceans, no life. Just a barren landscape, stretching for miles and miles. The sky was a dull gray, with clouds that seemed to hover ominously, like they were waiting for something. The ground was cracked, as if the planet had once been alive but had since died. There were no sounds here, not even the wind. The air was thick, heavy, and difficult to breathe, like it was rejecting anyone who dared to land. A small ship descended slowly, its thrusters glowing orange in the dim light. Inside, a group of explorers sat quietly, their faces tense. These were no ordinary explorers. They were the best of the best, trained for harsh environments, able to survive even the deadliest of places. But this planet was something else. The ship landed with a soft thud, the sound echoing into the stillness. The crew remained seated for a moment, unsure of what they would find. There had been rumors of an ancient civilization on this planet, an alien race that had been wiped out long ago. But no one knew exactly what happened. Some said the planet was cursed, others that it was a battleground where a war of the gods had once taken place. But whatever the truth was, they were here now, and they had a mission. Their leader, Captain Reynolds, gave a quick nod, signaling the crew to get ready. "Stay alert," he ordered in a low voice, his eyes scanning the landscape outside. "We don't know what we're walking into." The hatch opened with a hiss, and the crew stepped out, their boots crunching on the dry earth. The air was colder than they had expected, biting at their skin as they moved forward. They were here to investigate, to collect any data, and most importantly, to find any signs of life, if there was any life left at all. As they walked, the crew members scattered, scanning the area with their advanced equipment. There was no sign of any living creatures, just endless ruins. Buildings that had once been grand now stood as nothing more than hollow shells. Alien structures, some half collapsed, others still standing, their surfaces etched with strange symbols no one could understand. The eerie silence weighed heavily on them all. But then, there was something else. A faint sound, a low moan, barely audible but unmistakable. It came from behind one of the ruined buildings. Without a word, the crew turned toward the noise. Their weapons were ready, just in case. Captain Reynolds motioned for them to move cautiously, and they approached the source of the sound. As they rounded the corner, they saw it. A small figure, barely visible in the shadow of the rubble. It was an alien, a girl to be specific. She lay on the ground, her body covered in dirt and debris. She was clearly injured, her breathing shallow and weak. She looked like she had been abandoned for days, maybe even longer. Her skin was a pale blue, her features sharp and delicate. Her long, silver hair was matted with dirt, and her clothes were torn and worn. She was alone. The crew stopped dead in their tracks. No one moved. No one spoke. It was hard to believe what they were seeing. This was an alien, yes, but she was no threat. She was too weak to be a danger. The girl looked like a fragile creature, lost and broken, lying in the ruins of her fallen civilization. The silence was broken by Dr. Eric, the ship's medic, who stepped forward. He was young, barely past his training, but he had always felt a deep sense of compassion. "We can't leave her here," he said softly, looking down at the girl. "She needs help." The rest of the crew glanced at each other uneasily. They had all been trained to think of aliens as enemies. Their mission was to gather information, not to save anyone, especially not someone like her. There was a sense of unease, as though the alien girl was a reminder of something far darker, a symbol of a race that had fallen, an ancient civilization lost to time. "We don't have time for this," Captain Reynolds said, his voice sharp. "We came here for a reason. This is just a distraction." But Dr. Eric didn't back down. He knelt beside the girl, carefully checking her pulse. Her skin was cold, but her heart was still beating. "She's alive," he said, almost to himself. She's been abandoned." The other crew members stood at a distance, still unsure of what to do. Some looked away, others watched with suspicion. But no one moved to stop Dr. Eric as he gently lifted the alien girl into his arms. She was light, fragile, and her skin was cool to the touch. He could feel the faint tremors running through her body. Whatever had happened to her, she was on the edge of death. "We need to get her back to the ship," Dr. Eric said, his voice filled with determination. "We can help her. We have the technology. She won't survive out here." Captain Reynolds sighed heavily, clearly frustrated. He didn't want to waste time on something he saw as pointless. But he couldn't deny the look in Dr. Eric's eyes. The medic was never one to give up on someone in need. "Fine," Captain Reynolds said reluctantly. "But we're not staying here longer than we have to. We complete the mission, and then we leave." "Understood." The crew nodded in agreement, though some of them still looked at the alien girl with suspicion. As Dr. Eric carried her back toward the ship, the other crew members followed, each lost in their thoughts. The planet was still silent. There were no signs of life anywhere else, and the mystery of what had happened here was only growing. But one thing was certain. For the first time since landing on this desolate world, there was something, or someone, worth saving. And for Dr. Eric, that was enough. The ship hummed softly as it lifted off the barren planet's surface, its engines straining to escape the planet's weak gravity. Inside, the crew was still processing the strange turn of events. The alien girl lay unconscious on a medical table, hooked up to various life support machines. Dr. Eric hovered over her, adjusting the monitors, checking her vital signs, and analyzing the data streaming across the screens. His hands moved with practiced precision, but his mind was elsewhere. "She's still hanging on," Dr. Eric muttered to himself, watching the steady beat of the girl's heart. He wasn't sure how long she could survive like this. Her species was so different from humans, and their biology was completely foreign. But there was something about her, something that made him feel this deep, almost instinctual need to save her. He had been a medic for years, seen countless injuries, and helped many species from all over the galaxy. But this was different. It wasn't just the girl's physical injuries that troubled him. It was the emptiness in her eyes, the look of someone who had been abandoned, forgotten. He couldn't shake the image of her lying in the ruins, so small and fragile, with no one to help her. Suddenly, Captain Reynolds' voice broke through his thoughts. "How is she?" Dr. Eric looked up, seeing the captain standing at the doorway, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. The rest of the crew stood behind him, waiting for an update. "She's stable for now," Dr. Eric said, trying to sound confident. "But she's not out of danger yet. Her injuries are severe. It's going to take time to heal her, if we can heal her at all." Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "If we can heal her? You're a medic, Eric. You've handled worse than this." Dr. Eric didn't answer immediately. He focused on the girl again, adjusting the medical equipment around her. "This is different. Her biology is unlike anything we've ever encountered. She may not even survive the process." The crew members exchanged uneasy glances. The situation was tense, and no one had expected a rescue mission to turn into a medical emergency. Some of them were frustrated. Time was precious, and the mission they had come for was important. "Listen," Reynolds said, his voice more serious now. "I didn't sign up for some charity case. We came here for one thing: information. We're wasting valuable time." Dr. Eric met his gaze, not backing down. "If we don't help her, she'll die. And it's not just about the mission anymore. She's a living being. And maybe, just maybe, there's more to this than we realize." He glanced back at the alien girl, his voice softening. "If she survives, she might be able to help us understand what happened to her people." Reynolds stared at Dr. Eric for a long moment, then sighed, clearly conflicted. "You've got 24 hours. Then we leave. No more time wasted." As the captain turned and walked away, Dr. Eric felt a mix of frustration and relief. The girl was his responsibility now, and he wasn't going to give up on her, no matter what. Hours passed, and Dr. Eric barely left the medical bay. He monitored the girl's condition, checking her every few minutes. Slowly, she began to show signs of improvement. Her heart rate became steadier, her breathing deeper. But she still hadn't woken up, and the mystery of who she was and what had happened to her people lingered in the back of Dr. Eric's mind. It was late into the night when the first real change occurred. The girl's fingers twitched. Dr. Eric's heart skipped a beat. He rushed to her side, leaning over her. Hey, can you hear me?" For a moment, there was nothing. Then her eyes fluttered open. They were a bright, otherworldly shade of violet, unlike any humans. They focused slowly on Dr. Eric, and for a moment, they seemed to stare into his soul. The alien girl's breathing became more shallow, but she managed to whisper something. A word, perhaps, or a name. Dr. Eric leaned closer. "What did you say? Can you hear me?" Her voice was faint, barely a whisper. "Safe," she breathed. "Safe, here." Dr. Eric's heart raced. She was awake. The first sign of life after what had seemed like an endless struggle. But what did she mean by safe? Was she trying to tell him something important? He tried again, his voice gentle, coaxing her to speak more. "Safe," he repeated. "Do you mean the ship? You're safe here. We'll help you." The girl's eyes flickered, as though struggling to stay awake. Her body was still weak, and her energy seemed to drain quickly. Dr. Eric could see the exhaustion in her face. Whatever had happened to her was far worse than he had imagined. Before he could say anything else, she whispered, almost inaudibly, "Not safe anymore." Dr. Eric froze. He had no idea what she was trying to tell him. What had happened to her? Why did she say it wasn't safe anymore? His mind raced, filled with questions. But the girl's eyelids fluttered, and she slipped back into unconsciousness, leaving Dr. Eric with more doubts than answers. Outside the medical bay, the crew gathered in the ship's control room, the tension still hanging in the air. They were all aware of what was at stake: the mission, the data, the alien girl. Each one of them had their own thoughts about what should be done next. "We've given Eric enough time," Captain Reynolds said, his voice firm. "If she doesn't wake up soon, we need to focus on getting out of here. Our mission can't wait any longer." "I don't think we should give up yet." Lieutenant Mara, the ship's engineer, spoke up. "We don't know who she is or what her people were like. But we've never seen anything like this before. If she's connected to this planet's past, maybe she can help us understand what happened here. We need to learn everything we can." Captain Reynolds sighed. "Fine, but if she doesn't wake up soon, we're leaving. No more delays." Dr. Eric, still in the medical bay, overheard the conversation through the ship's comms. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The girl had spoken. She was still alive. And maybe, just maybe, there was hope. Hope for her survival. And for something more. The ship floated in silence, its engines purring quietly as it cruised through the vast emptiness of space. Dr. Eric stood in the dimly lit medical bay, watching over the alien girl as she rested, still weak but alive. It had been 2 days since she had awoken, and while she wasn't out of danger yet, there was progress. The monitors showed steady signs of improvement. Her heart rate was stronger, her breathing more regular. But there was still a long way to go. He had never seen anything like her. The girl was no ordinary alien. Her biology was unique, unlike anything he'd studied in his years as a medic. Her injuries were unlike anything he had treated before, her healing process much slower. Yet every time he checked her vitals, he saw small signs of life. The girl was a mystery, a fragile one, but still a fighter. Dr. Eric gently adjusted the IV lines connected to her arm, checking her hydration levels and administering more of the synthetic medicine designed to stabilize her. He was meticulous, focusing on the task at hand. But his mind kept drifting to the same question. Who was she? What had happened to her people? The girl had said it wasn't safe anymore. Safe from what? And what had she meant by here? Dr. Eric needed answers, but there was only so much he could gather from her limited words. The language barrier was a challenge, but he wasn't giving up. As he worked, the girl shifted slightly, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment, she didn't seem to recognize her surroundings, her violet eyes scanning the room, the sterile white walls, and the soft beeping of the medical monitors. She frowned, confusion crossing her face, before her gaze fell on Dr. Eric, and the tiniest hint of recognition seemed to spark in her eyes. "Safe?" she asked in a soft voice, her throat dry from disuse. Dr. Eric smiled gently, trying to ease her confusion. "You're safe here. You're aboard our ship. We're trying to help you." The girl's eyes wandered to the machines around her, and for the first time, she spoke in a language that Dr. Eric couldn't understand. The words were strange and melodic, full of soft tones. He couldn't make sense of them, but something about the way she spoke made him feel a deep sense of urgency. "I don't understand," Dr. Eric said softly, his voice full of regret. "Please, tell me if you can." The girl's expression softened, as if she understood the difficulty of communication. She slowly raised one hand, her fingers trembling, and pointed toward the small window of the medical bay. Darkness. They came from the dark. Dr. Eric felt a chill run down his spine. What was she saying? "Who came from the dark?" he asked, leaning closer, desperate for answers. But the girl's eyelids fluttered, and she sank back into unconsciousness, her body still too weak to stay awake for long. Dr. Eric stood there, staring at her, his mind racing. Darkness. They came from the dark. Was she talking about an enemy? A force that destroyed her people? Or something else entirely? In the control room, the crew was growing restless. The ship had been in deep space for days now, and Captain Reynolds was beginning to feel the pressure. They had come here with a mission: to gather data and leave. The alien girl was an unexpected complication, and her condition wasn't improving fast enough to justify staying in the system any longer. "We need to make a decision," Reynolds said firmly as he stood by the communication console, addressing the crew. This mission was supposed to be about finding answers, not babysitting an alien. We can't afford to lose more time. Lieutenant Murrah, the ship's engineer, didn't share the captain's urgency. She could hold the key to understanding what happened to her people, she argued. "We need to figure out who she is, what happened to her species. Maybe she can help us. We've never encountered anything like this before." "I agree," said Dr. Ellis, the ship's biologist, speaking up from his seat. "Her species could hold the answer to so many of our questions, but we can't keep risking everything just to study her. We need to prioritize." Captain Reynolds gave them a hard look, his patience wearing thin. "You're all forgetting one thing," he said, his voice sharp. "We're on a deadline. The longer we stay here, the more vulnerable we become. And for what? To learn about an extinct alien race. We've got a responsibility to complete this mission and get back to Earth." The tension in the room was palpable. No one wanted to give up on the girl, but no one could deny that they were running out of time. The resources on board the ship weren't infinite. They needed to decide: help her or leave her behind. Back in the medical bay, Dr. Eric wasn't listening to the debate. His mind was focused on one thing: the girl's survival. He had barely noticed the passing hours as he continued his work, monitoring her condition and checking her vitals. There was still something strange about her recovery process. It was as if she were drawing energy from somewhere else, something he couldn't understand. Her wounds were healing slowly, but there were no signs of infection, no signs of typical biological decay. It was like her body was in a state of suspended animation, slowly but surely stitching itself back together. Dr. Eric reached for a scanner and ran it over her body again, analyzing the data. As he did, the scanner beeped in warning. The readings were off the charts, far beyond the normal human or even alien limits. Her body was fluctuating between different states, her cells regenerating at a pace that was almost impossible to track. "What is going on with you?" Dr. Eric muttered under his breath, his fingers hovering over the controls. Suddenly, the girl's eyes opened again, this time fully alert, her violet eyes shining with an intensity that took him by surprise. She didn't speak right away, but her gaze locked onto his, and there was a quiet strength behind her stare. She wasn't just a fragile being anymore. There was something powerful about her now, something he hadn't noticed before. "I can help you," Dr. Eric said softly, sensing the change in her. "But you need to tell me what happened. I need to know how I can help you heal. What you said about the darkness. Please, explain. I need answers." The girl's lips parted, and for a moment, Dr. Eric thought she might speak. But instead, her eyes dimmed, her body trembling as if she were struggling to hold on to consciousness. I am not the last," she whispered weakly, before falling silent once again. Dr. Eric stared at her, stunned. Not the last. What did she mean by that? The girl's words echoed in his mind. He had only just begun to understand her, and already it felt like she was revealing pieces of a much bigger puzzle, one that could change everything. The ship drifted quietly through the black sea of space. In the medical bay, Dr. Eric sat by the alien girl's side, his mind heavy with the girl's last words. "I am not the last." The sentence kept echoing in his head. If she wasn't the last, were there others like her still alive? Lost, hiding, or worse, hunted? He barely slept, always checking her vitals, talking to her even when she was unconscious. She stirred sometimes, murmuring in her strange, musical language, words he didn't understand, but the fear in her voice was clear. One night, while the ship floated near an asteroid field, something strange happened. The alarms went off. Red lights flashed. The ship shook violently. "Warning! Unknown object detected." The AI's voice echoed coldly through the halls. Captain Reynolds and the crew rushed to the command deck. Eric hesitated. He looked down at the alien girl, who now gripped the sheets tightly, her body trembling. Her eyes opened suddenly, wide, terrified. She whispered one word. "They." Eric's blood ran cold. On the command deck, chaos reigned. "What's going on?" shouted Reynolds. Lieutenant Mara's hands flew over the controls. "I don't know. Something just appeared out of nowhere. It's not natural. It's moving too fast, too silently." Dr. Ellis stared at the radar screen. His face went pale. "It's not just one thing. There are multiple shadows." Out the main window, the crew saw it. Shapes, black against black, moving without light, without sound. They seemed alive, almost like predators stalking prey. Then, without warning, the ship jolted again. Something had latched onto their hull. Hull integrity down by 12%. The AI warned. Captain Reynolds cursed under his breath. Shields up, full power. But it was too late. The lights flickered. Systems failed one after another. Something was draining the ship, leaching the energy like a parasite. Back in the medical bay, Eric realized the girl was trying to sit up, despite her weakness. "No, you're not ready yet," Eric said, trying to gently push her back down. But she grabbed his wrist, surprisingly strong for someone who had barely survived. Her violet eyes burned with urgency. "They feed on life," she rasped. "They found us. They will not stop." Dr. Eric felt panic rise inside him. What do we do? How do we fight them? The girl shook her head slowly. Run. The message was clear. Fighting wasn't an option. These things, whatever they were, could not be stopped by normal means. She pointed weakly toward a small device hanging from her neck. Eric hadn't noticed it before, a tiny crystal glowing faintly. "What's this?" he asked. "Hope," she whispered. Eric knew he didn't have time to ask questions. He gently removed the crystal from around her neck and slipped it into his pocket. Then he carefully lifted her from the bed, cradling her thin form against his chest. Outside the medical bay, the ship's hallways were dark, lit only by emergency lights. The shadows moved along the walls, strange and wrong. Eric's heart pounded in his chest as he moved quietly, sticking to the narrow paths and avoiding open spaces. Suddenly, he heard a voice crackling over the comms. "Captain Reynolds. All crew, retreat to the engine room. We're making a jump. Now." Eric didn't hesitate. He tightened his hold on the girl and sprinted toward the engine room. Behind him, he heard scraping noises, like claws against metal. He didn't look back. He couldn't. In the engine room, the remaining crew was scrambling. Lieutenant Mera was at the controls, trying to override the damaged systems. "We don't have enough power," she cried. "They're draining us too fast." Dr. Eric burst into the room, out of breath. He laid the alien girl carefully on a nearby bench. Her eyes fluttered open, just barely. "The crystal," she whispered. "Use the crystal, in the core." Eric didn't think twice. He pulled the crystal from his pocket. It pulsed with a strange, soft light, growing brighter the closer he moved it to the ship's main power core. Captain Reynolds stared at him. "What the hell are you doing, Eric?" "Trust me," Eric shouted. "It's the only chance we have." Without waiting for permission, Eric pressed the crystal against the main power core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a pulse of energy shot through the ship. The shadows screamed, a high, horrible sound that rattled the very walls. Outside, the black shapes recoiled, tearing away from the hull. The ship's lights flared back to life. Engines roared. "Jump," Captain Reynolds ordered. Lieutenant Mera slammed her hand down on the controls. With a flash of light, the ship tore itself free from the trap and jumped into hyperspace, leaving the dark creatures behind. Silence returned. The crew sat on the floor, breathing heavily, trying to process what had just happened. Dr. Eric returned to the alien girl's side. She was unconscious again, but alive. Safe for now. He looked down at her, realizing something very important. They hadn't just rescued her. She had rescued them. The ship floated safely in hyperspace now, far from the shadows that had nearly killed them. The crew was tired, scared, but alive. Dr. Eric sat by the alien girl's side once more, watching her breathe. The crystal, their hope, was now locked carefully in the ship's core. It had saved them, just as she had said. But questions still filled the air. Who was she really? Where had those monsters come from? And why had she been left alone? Hours later, the alien girl finally opened her eyes again. Her violet gaze was calm now. Stronger. Dr. Eric smiled gently. "You're safe," he said. "We're all safe. Thanks to you." She blinked slowly, as if remembering the horrors they had escaped. Then, in broken English, she spoke. "You must know the truth." The crew gathered around her, listening closely as she struggled to speak. "My people, we were guardians," she began. "Long ago, we protected the galaxy from them." She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength, then continued. "The darkness, they are ancient, creatures from outside this universe. They feed on life, on light." Captain Reynolds leaned forward. "But why were you alone? What happened to the others?" The girl's voice grew heavy with sadness. "We fought them, but we lost. They grew too many, too strong. In the final battle, my people sacrificed themselves to trap the darkness." She touched the crystal around Eric's neck. "This is what remains of their power, the last light. It can shield, but not forever." A heavy silence filled the room. Lieutenant Mera frowned. "You mean they're not gone? We didn't destroy them?" The girl nodded weakly. "They are only pushed back. They will return. Stronger." Dr. Ellis looked around, panic rising. "Then what do we do? How do we fight them when they come back?" The girl slowly pushed herself up, sitting straighter now. There was a new fire in her eyes, a strength none of them had seen before. You must become the new guardians, she said. It is your turn. The words stunned the crew. Them? Ordinary humans. Guardians of the galaxy. Captain Reynolds shook his head. We're just explorers. We're not soldiers. The girl smiled faintly. Neither were we. Once. She reached into a pouch on her waist and pulled out a small device, a beacon, glowing softly. Find the others, she said. There are more like me, hidden, waiting. She placed the beacon in Eric's hands. Together, you can fight. Alone, you will fall. Later, Dr. Eric stood alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The beacon pulsed quietly in his hand. A map, maybe. A guide to others like her. A path to hope, or perhaps to war. He thought of Earth, of all the people who lived without knowing the danger waiting in the dark. He thought of the girl, her bravery, her loss, her strength. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Dr. Eric closed his eyes and whispered to himself, we're not alone anymore. A new journey had begun, one that would decide the fate of the galaxy.